all fun. I mean, from the whole thing of food, from the whole thing of everything, where to stop,
Yeah.
where to shop, where to eat, where to do everything, everything. Yeah, we're gonna have a blast over
Just
there.
imagine
Interviewing
an
some people
entire
too.
trip around sports,
Yeah.
and then that's
Oops.
really what all we want you to do,
Damn it.
and get out there and do stuff. So get out from, even if you live in Boston, you may not even know some of these places exist. So
Yep.
the point is check out your own local area for what can you do sports related in your own
Yep.
hometown.
It's almost like
So-
that whole thing about you and I have been New Yorkers our whole life, and we both just got to the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, that's
not
so
even
weird.
a few years ago. I mean, it took us 50 years to get to
Yeah.
the place that's been right. I mean, we stare at that place. We know
Yep.
that place. You know the Statue of Liberty's there. I can't imagine. I bet you there are a bunch of New Yorkers. I mean, how many millions
Oh,
of
yeah.
New Yorkers? But who have never been there still. And have gone their whole lives and just really, yeah, you know, I know it's there. I'll get there one day and all that.
Yep.
God, the history and the still the oddness of the the building where they still have that whole place together in the old doctor's offices
Yeah.
when they took they brought
And it's,
people in from Europe in the 1920s.
Ellis
Yeah,
Island.
Ellis Island, and it's semi creepy almost because you're like, oh my! I mean, it's the metal tables are still there, the white walls with paint where it's just like. Wow, you can imagine being an immigrant coming here in 1920 from
Yeah.
Europe and all that. You'd be so scared.
And scared and excited and intimidated.
Yeah, and excited, right? I mean, you have a future. At least they're giving you
Yep.
one, right? Yeah.
But that's the, and he's right too, because we have lived in New York. I've lived in New York my whole life,
Yeah.
and I've only moved away for a short period of time.
Yeah, not as much as me, but
Not
yeah.
as much as you. But he's right. I mean, I've only been to I've been around the Statue of
Right.
Liberty on one of those little cruise boats,
Yep.
and then I've driven past it,
Yep.
taking my kids to a
Flown
school
over
event,
it 45
flown
times.
over it. But this was
Yeah.
the time that we actually got there, took the boat over, got out, checked out Ellis Island, took a tour,
man.
and
We got great
really,
pictures of that,
Yeah, we
too.
really did. So the point is that we want to teach you guys to do that with anything sports related too.
Yeah.
There's so much out there to see, and we're going to bring it all to you.
Yeah.
And we have talked so much about this, so we should actually start getting to
Right.
our interview, because we're going to be bringing so much more to you over the next few weeks,
Right.
and we want to save some of the good stuff.
George Veater coming up here. All right, let's
George
get into
Veater.
George Veater. This is cool, man. Again, I wish I could had sat in with you for this one, but boy, what a great job! And we're going to bring that interview to you right now. You ready to go live with that interview?
Enjoy.
All right, let's enjoy the interview. We'll be right back.
So here on Sports Palooza, you guys know us for talking a lot about football, baseball, and even professional wrestling on this show. But this time we're changing gears a little bit and talking saddle bronc riding. And today's guest is George Veater, a 51-year-old entrepreneur, business owner, cattle rancher, and professional saddle bronc rider. And I want to welcome you to the show, George.
Thanks, Lisa. It's great to be on your show.
I'm so happy to have you, because I grew up and I remember, I always loved watching football and baseball, but I always tuned into the rodeos. There was something about watching you guys do what you do and trying to stay on the horses and the bulls and all this other stuff. And it fascinated me. And I mean, it takes me back. Talking to you kind of takes me back to when I was a kid and watched all this stuff. How did you were you kind of the same way? Did you see it on TV and want to do it? I mean, how did you get started in this crazy hobby of yours?
Well, actually, I was born and raised on a cattle ranch, and so the culture of rodeo was something that I grew up around. My dad actually was a bull rider back when he was in high school and college age, and so I, like all little boys, thought it'd be cool to be somewhat like my dad, and then decided as I got a little older that I wanted to participate as soon as possible. And then I started when I was a kid, about 11 years old, in junior rodeos, riding calves and then steers and then bulls and then bucking horses. And so I just evolved into it and grew up in the culture that supported it.
All right, a couple of questions on everything you just said there, because that's a lot of information and it just makes me think about so much. Because first of all, most people, when they say, hey, what does your dad do? It's like, oh, he's a doctor, he's a lawyer, he owns a restaurant. You're saying he's a bull rider. I mean, that to me is probably one of the coolest things that you can say as a kid. Were people fascinated kind of with what your dad did back then?
Well, yeah, in a sense, but he rode when he was very young, so I never got to see him ride. He rode in fact, Fresno State out here in California, where I'm from, they have a rodeo team, and he was on the inaugural rodeo team in 1950. And the very first rodeo, college has a rodeo program, the NRIA, and he won the bull riding at the very first Fresno State Rodeo, and they gave him a silver and gold buckle that he wore all the way until he died year before last at age 86.
Oh, wow. And I'm sorry you lost him, but wow, what a legacy to leave behind. And, you know, when you look back, I mean, I can understand, you know, you want to follow in Dad's footsteps and want to do kind of what he did, but that takes a lot of courage to say, hey, I want to ride those animals that can throw you off in 50 million different directions. I mean, that takes a lot of stamina and just courage.
You know, it's interesting, and I see kids grow up and want to try the sport, and there's definitely that separator where they have their first big wreck, where they get thrown up, you know, on top of their head and get knocked out, or they get a relatively serious injury, and then you really find out how bad they want to ride broncs, you want to ride bulls. But I was one of those kids that the injuries didn't bother me at all, and I just had that driving desire to be great at that sport, and so that was bigger than the fear of the injury.
So you had injuries? Like, what kind of injuries did you have?
Oh, yeah, I've had lots of injuries. When I was just a kid, I got whipped down, and the bull came up and hit me with his head. You know, I got whipped forward, and he came up, and so that was my first kind of serious injury, and it knocked me out for a period of time. I split my chin open up. I had to be taken to the emergency and sewn up. Then the injury got infected, and they had to take the stitches out the next week, and then they had to burn off all of the, you know, flesh that was infected and re-sew my chin back together. So that was the first big injury that I remember. But over the years, I've had both my knees reconstructed, ACL reconstruction. I've snapped both my ACL joint or ligaments. I've had my bicep detached and reattached. I've had my shoulder reconstructed. I've had my one ankle I broke 4 times and then had to have that surgically tightened up because it was falling out all the time. And it just kind of comes with the territory. You know, you deal with injuries and you rehab and you go again.
What is it as a rider? And then I want to ask you from a fan perspective too, because what is it as a rider? Is it the thrill of beating, you know, winning over the horse or the bull? Is it, you know, like, what is the thrill for you in doing this? What do you get out of it?
Well, part of it's the competition. You know, I love to compete, and the more competitive you are in any sport, seems like the further that you evolve into the sport. So I love the competitive aspect. And about rodeo and the rough stock events, there's 3 standard rough stock events. There's the bull riding, the bareback riding, and the saddle bronc riding. The saddle bronc riding that I participate in is considered the classic event of rodeo. Because when it's done right and you're in time with the horse, it's a real beautiful movement. And the average bucking horse is going to weigh approximately 1,400 pounds. So to feel that energy when the animal jumps out of the chute and jumps and kicks, and the G-force and the electricity of that, and then to get in time with that and to make it look pretty, it's just, it's hard to explain. It's just...
So that's what I think, like, as a fan, you're describing why we actually like to watch it, too, because you're right. It's this artistry of getting in that rhythm and watching you guys, like, have that perfect momentum of, you know, when the bull or the horse goes one way, you go the other way, you know, and it really is beautiful to watch, you know?
Yeah, and it's a euphoric feeling when everything works right. It's kind of like organized chaos, where you know at any time you still could be thrown off. The animal could move in a direction you aren't anticipating and could throw you off, but you're in the middle of this kind of rhythmic motion that at the same time is a little bit uncontrolled. And when you get to the end of that, it's just it's hard to articulate the feeling, but it's awesome. Once you've made a really good ride on a really rank bucking horse, that will kind of possess you, and you'll want to keep doing it.
Now, in order to compete, I mean, here you are, I know you, when you were younger, you said that, you started. How much time did you put in on this? Did you go to school and then ride all afternoon? And then as you got older,
Sure.
Talk to me about how much training goes into this.
Sure. Well, as a kid on the ranch, I'd just get on anything that bucked. We had a little makeshift bucking chute, where you load the animals to get on them and then turn them loose.
Mm-hmm.
And I get on, and we had a few hundred head of cattle on the ranch that I grew up on. So anything that we thought would buck, of course, all the herd bulls and even any wild cows, my friends and I would be getting on. And then we started boarding some wild horses for a pack station. They were unbroke horses. We get on them all the time. And then you also can go to rodeo schools. So people that have great reputations in the business, that are world champions or have accomplished a lot, they'll put on schools throughout the country. They're like 3-day schools where you go and get on as many horses as you want under supervision. And I went to several of those schools as well. And then I went to high school rodeos and competed. High school rodeos are very organized, and they have all of the standard events that you see in professional rodeos. So I competed through high school rodeos and then went on a full-ride scholarship to college, and then went to amateur rodeos and then professional rodeos. So I've practiced always, and even now I have a herd of practice bucking horses on my ranch, and I have a rodeo arena on my ranch, and we consistently practice on those.
Okay, when do you sleep? Because seriously, I mean, I watched a YouTube video of you riding, and then you are an entrepreneur. You run this cattle ranch. You own this company. I mean, and you run this podcast, and the podcast, I believe it's called Fit Because. So you do all of these different things. I mean, seriously, when do you sleep?
Well, I sleep, but I organize my days, and I'm just able to schedule all of the various activities. I love to physically train. I train every day, so I have a home gym, and then I have a gym membership here in Fresno where my financial planning office is. So I train for an hour every day very intensively, and then I spend my time on the ranch. I have a partner on the cattle ranch to run the cattle business. And then I have a great staff and a great group of employees in my financial practice. And then I have great friends that, assist me in this rodeo business. So I've got great people around me, and I've learned to time manage over the years so I can make progress in everything at once. So it's an acquired skill over time.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and to let me ask you, like, to be a fan and watch it. I mean, is it as popular, now as it was when I was growing up? We're about the same age, and it was a big deal. Like when the rodeo stuff came on television. I mean, do you guys still fight to get the fans to come, or is it kind of growing?
I would say that rodeo popularity continues to evolve and grow. The contestant base is a issue, getting new crops of talent to come up, just because the urban sprawl is natural in our society. There's not as many kids growing up on ranches and farms that are exposed to rodeo as part of their, the fabric of their growing up years. So I would say our pool of competitors is not as big as it once was. But the fan base is growing all the time.
Do you, so obviously you travel a lot for this too, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because that, like you said, I mean, you talk about time management. I mean, not only do you have to do all of these things, but now you have to go on the road to get to the different competitions. Talk a little bit about where you've gone in this, journey of yours.
Thank you. Well, in the years where I rodeoed, where I was competing in the most events, I would compete 30 to 40 events a year. And you would condense your schedule into as many rodeos as you can get to in a weekend. So with my traveling partners, we would go to a rodeo, say Friday night, Saturday matinee, Saturday night, and Sunday, and then we'd hook it home. So it's very intense travel, and you get there The bronc riding event, saddle bronc riding, is typically the third event. So we would